Hi, and welcome to the Grandparents and Beyond tutorial for November. The topic is interpersonal relationships. I'm Nina Walden, Managing Director of Chai Mitzvah, and I'm looking forward to sharing and exploring this topic with you. There are great activities and conversations in this booklet. We have interesting texts to spark discussions, as well as 2 fun projects to do together either in person or virtually. A wonderful story from the book When All You've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough by Rabbi Harold Kushner, and a fun puzzle focusing on the 5th commandment. You can play the dice game, Role Model Role, and share great stories about your own family. You'll have the opportunity to learn about ethical wills, and perhaps even write your own, sharing your aspirations and hopes for the next generation. Today, we will focus on interpersonal relationships between both family members and friends. We'll explore the wisdom of Jewish tradition relating to these relationships and bring it to life with fun activities. Before we begin, a quick reminder. Before you start, make sure everyone is on board, including the parents or guardians. Read the texts and choose the activities and conversation questions that work for your family or your group. Don't feel that you need to complete the entire booklet. The recommended ages for texts, conversations, and activities are marked by the icons you see on the screen. But your youngsters might be ready for things that are in an older age group, or they might enjoy a game that is recommended for younger kids. You and your youngster are the best judges of which activities to do, and the discussions can go wherever you like. There are no right or wrong answers. Also, you will want to prepare some things in advance. If you plan to do the first activity on page 2 in person, you'll need blocks, sand, or cards. If you make the honor board in person, you'll need photos and paper. You might also want to print out the parent puzzle on page 6 and the text to highlight on page 7, and the dice templates on page 10 for the game Role Model Role. Let's begin by building together. You can build a tower out of blocks, or if you're meeting virtually, you can use the whiteboard on Zoom for your collaborative building, or use Kami. Here's a demonstration of how to build using Kami. Start by going to Kami.com. You can create a free account. I've already done this, so I'll sign in, and now I'm going to create a new blank page. The thing about this that's good is that you and your youngster can both be drawing or writing on the same blank page. I'd like to start with just a marker. Freehand highlighter is what you'll want to click on, and choose the color. I think I'd like to make a blue building. I can draw anything I like. If I don't like what I drew, I just erase it. Maybe you'd like, instead of drawing freehand, to use shapes like blocks. I'm going to make a triangle block. Or maybe I'd like to make a square block underneath. You see, we can build a house together. And we can make any color we like. So maybe I'm going to put a round window right here in the middle of the roof. Maybe I'll put a door in. You can keep going together, taking turns, until you've made what you like. This activity leads to the story From When All You've Ever Wanted Isn't Enough by Rabbi Harold Kushner. I was sitting on a beach one summer day, watching 2 children, a boy and a girl, playing in the sand. They were hard at work building an elaborate sandcastle by the water's edge, with gates and towers and moats and internal passages. Just when they had nearly finished their project, a big wave came along and knocked it down, reducing it to a heap of wet sand. I expected the children to burst into tears, devastated by what had happened to all their hard work. But they surprised me. Instead, they ran up the shore away from the water, laughing and holding hands, and sat down to build another castle. I realized that they had taught me an important lesson. All the things in our lives, all the complicated structures we spend so much time and energy creating, are built on sand. Only our relationships to other people endure. Sooner or later, the wave will come along and knock down what we have worked so hard to build up. When that happens, only the person who has somebody's hand to hold will be able to laugh. Ask your youngster, is Rabbi Kushner's expectation of tears the normal expectation? Or would you have expected a different reaction from the children? How does your youngster react when something he or she builds is knocked down? What allowed the children in this story to laugh through the wave that knocked down their castle? What are the messages that you take away from this story? And how has this message played out in your own life? Honoring parents and raising children are not simple tasks. These relationships are complicated and evolving, involving tensions around favoritism, competition for attention, and tensions between generations. We're going to explore the roles of parent and child from different perspectives, starting with the relationship between children and their parents as outlined in the Fifth Commandment. We'll start by making an honor board. On pictures of your family members of every generation, drawings or photos, tell what you do to honor each one. For a fun way to create together virtually, try Padlet. Go to Padlet.com. I've already made a free account, so it went directly to my account, but I can show you how to make a bulletin board or any background that you like. You can go to the gallery and choose a background that you like. I chose this one that looks like a bulletin board. You can choose anything you like. And then you can import your own pictures and write your own text on them that I did before, and I'll show you how to add to it. I just take a photograph from my desktop, then I'll write on the top, I honor by, and at the bottom I'll add a caption. I honor by asking questions. Now I can save it by writing publish, and here it is on my honor board. Keep this honor board handy for the next activities. Now we're ready to think about the Fifth Commandment, which is the basis of our attitude towards the generation before us. Let's read the texts. From Exodus, honor your father and your mother, in order that your days may be prolonged on the soil that the Eternal your God is giving you. The next text from Leviticus, each person, his mother and father you are to hold in awe, and my Sabbaths you are to keep. I am the Eternal your God. As Moses descended from Mount Sinai bearing the 10 Commandments, rabbinic tradition imagined one tablet to contain 5 statements intended to govern our relationship with God, while the second recorded 5 brief laws governing relations between people. Oddly, the 5th commandment, you shall honor your father and mother, was included on the first tablet. Long ago, the rabbis understood this apparent error of placement to suggest a profound truth, that honoring one's parents is to be understood essentially as an act of worshiping God. Let's look at the conversation questions that apply to these texts. Which of these questions inspires you? See what your youngster has to say. You might discuss these. How does honoring your parents help make your life better? In what ways is honoring your parents related to acts of holiness? How do your parents honor their parents? How do you honor your grandma and grandpa and other important adults in your life? Here's a fun game called Parent Puzzle. It's based on gematria. In Hebrew, every letter has a number value. That system is called gematria. You've probably been told by your parents that the fifth commandment is to honor your father and your mother. But how are you supposed to do that? You can use the gematria chart and the word bank that you see here to solve the riddle. Fill in the letters from right to left because Hebrew is written from right to left. The first one is done for you. With the number value of 13, this word means love. 1 is Aleph. 5 is Hey. 2 is Bet. And 5 is Hey again. The word is Ahava, and that means love. Now let's look at the second one. With a number value of 26, this word means honor. 20 is Chaf. 2 is Bet. And 4 is Daled. The word is Kabed, which means honor. So you can see the gematria value of love is 13. The gematria value of honor is 26. So when you double the value of the word love, you get the value of the word honor. So the way to honor your parents is to show them double the usual amount of love. Now we come to the texts that focus on this topic. Let's read them. You can print this page out and with your youngster highlight all the ways that our tradition tells us to honor or hold our parents in awe. Our rabbis taught what is awe and what is honor. Awe means that a child must not sit in the father's seat, nor stand in the father's place, nor contradict the words of the father, nor tip the scale against him by siding with his opponents in a dispute. Honor means the child will provide the parents food and drink, clothes and covering, and lead them in and out when they are old and need a helping hand. That's from the Babylonian Talmud. Here's another one from the Babylonian Talmud. It is written, honor your father and mother in Exodus. Honor God with your substance in Proverbs. Just as with their Proverbs, you must honor even if it costs you financial loss, so too here in Exodus, you must honor even if it costs you financial loss. The next text is also from the Babylonian Talmud. From where do we learn that if one's father told him, do not return a lost object, even though it is the law, the child should not listen to him, the father? From the verse, you shall each hold awe for his mother and father, and keep my Sabbaths. I am God. You are all, you and your parents, obligated to honor me. To me, this text can be expanded to the obligations of children whose parents did not follow the commandments. We are not obligated to follow what our parents tell us to do if it is immoral or unjust. But turning back to the positive side of these texts, let's look at our honor boards again. Is there anything that we might add to some of the pictures? The texts above might have given us some ideas. It's fun to tell stories about the people in our family who came before us. The prompts you see here give some ideas to get started. The oldest family member I remember is... This story about my mother will make you laugh. We celebrated the Jewish holidays by... And I'm sure once you get started, you'll think of lots of stories you'd like to share. What do parents owe their children? The Talmudic source that we'll look at soon on page 11 reflects the fact that traditionally the commandments for child rearing were seen as the obligation of the father. In modern times, the obligations outlined in our traditional sources are seen as the responsibility of both the father and the mother. We should also note that grandparents and other important adults play a very important role in raising children. Here's a fun way to think of the values that parents and grandparents pass down to children and how their actions help the children learn these values and make them part of their lives. What do parents owe their children? The Talmudic source on page 11 reflects the fact that traditionally the commandments for child rearing were seen as the obligation of the father. In modern times, the obligations outlined in our traditional sources are seen as the responsibility of both the father and the mother. We should also note that grandparents and other important adults play a very important role in raising children. Here's a fun way to think of the values that parents pass down to children and how the actions they do help the children learn these values and make them part of their lives. It's a game called Role Model Role. Here's how you play. First, make the dice. Choose 6 character traits that represent the older generation's obligation to the children, according to or inspired by the Jewish texts. Write each action in one of the boxes on the character traits dice template that you see here. Next, write a number from 1 to 3 in each of the boxes on the numbers dice template. You can see here, for example, some character traits: honesty, wisdom, care, generosity, support, patience. You can, of course, choose your own, but these are some nice examples. And on the numbers die, write a number from 1 to 3. Here's how you play. The older generation will roll the character trait die first. Next, the younger generation will roll the numbers die. The numbers die determines how many ways the younger generation must tell how the older generation exhibits the character trait on the character trait die. For example, if the character traits die lands on generosity and the numbers die lands on 2, the younger generation will name 2 ways that the older generation exhibits generosity. If the younger player can name 2 ways, they get 2 points. Next, the roles are switched. So the younger generation throws the character traits die, and the older generation throws the numbers die. The older generation will tell ways the younger generation shows the character trait. The first person to reach 18 points is the winner. Now let's talk about ethical wills. In an ethical will, you can tell the next generation about your hopes and aspirations for them. You see a link here on ethical wills and how to get started at myjewishlearning.com. You'll find an outline to help you summarize a lifetime of lessons and beliefs and focus on the message for your youngsters. You can tell about what might be considered courageous choices you have made over a lifetime, and answer questions about how you prioritize your life. You'll find ideas to spark inspired storytelling and links to additional sources for ethical will writing. Then, last of all, we can explore some texts about Jewish parent and grandparenting. Train a child in the way he ought to go. He will not swerve from it, even in old age. That's from Proverbs. Here's one from the Babylonian Talmud. The father is bound in respect of his son to circumcise, redeem, which means perform a pidyon haben if the son is a firstborn, teach him Torah, take a wife for him, and teach him a craft. Some say to teach him to swim, too. Rabbi Judah said, "He who does not teach his son a craft teaches him to be a bandit, or to join a band of bandits." And some say he must teach him to swim. What is the reason? His life may depend on it. Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Kotsk said, "If you truly wished your children to study Torah, study it yourself in their presence. They will follow your example. Otherwise, they will not themselves study Torah, but will simply instruct their children to do so." Once, while the sage Honi was walking along the road, he saw an old man planting a carob tree. Honi asked him, "How many years will it take for this tree to give forth its fruit?" The man answered that it would require 70 years. Honi asked, "Are you so healthy a man that you expect to live that length of time and eat its fruit?" The man answered, "I found a fruitful world because my ancestors planted it for me. So too will I plant for my children." There's a link to a lovely animated story about Honi that brings this last text to life. The words turn into pictures as you scroll over them, which makes it nice even for the youngest kids. This brings us to the last questions. ones that are certainly important to all of those in the older generation. What is the goal of Jewish parenting? And what are some ways that the older generation can carry out their obligations to the children of today's world? Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy this month's activities and texts. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to contact me, Nina@chaimitzvah.org. See you next time.